Kia ora koutou. My name is David, aka Saint Divide. Welcome to my channel. So today I'm going to be looking at, bass and some different ways of using subharmonic generators, getting the bass and the kick to sit together well. I'm going to be using a pretty old 90s house beat. You know, I've created 5 different bass lines, 5 different bass sounds, and how we might go about getting them all to sit with each other. So strap yourself on in and let's get to it. Okay, so let's have a look and see what we've got here. I've dragged in an old, a late 90s house loop. Let's have a listen to it. Really straightforward, and I've created 5 different bass types, and I just want to really look today at this idea of getting your bass and the drum beat to sort of sit together, and my take on it really. On the drum beat channel here, I've just lowered the output gain. I've got Pro Q3 on every channel so we can look at the different frequencies that are coming from these basses, because every one of them will have a different sort of a sound to them, and we'll need to make that choice of which one is going to be the winner, the kick or the bass. And for that BX Clean Sweep Pro filter on the kick, so that I can filter out any stuff. It's not on at the moment, but we'll use it when we have to, see what happens with that. So I'm just going to level up the kick drum first and foremost. I've also got a version of TB Audio's Isolate, which will allow us to just literally isolate 200 Hertz and below, so we can hear the relationship between the kick and the bass, and see what sort of decisions we need to make, whether we need to use subharmonic generator or make space in the kick or in the bass or whatever it might be. But first, let's just level up the kick drum itself, and I'm just using my trusty old Klanghelm VUMT meter, and I really want this hit about -3, which it should be actually doing. Close enough for jazz. So let's bring in the first bass line and let's see how the bass sits with this beat. Okay, so as far as the level goes, I've already pre-done this. It sits really well, but it's a little bit weak sauce in the bottom end. It's a nice full sounding bass sound, but it just doesn't really seem to have any punch. Because if I flip into my mono setting, I just think that we can do a little better, but we need to come back to this meter after some adjustments here. So the first thing I want to grab here is a Devaster, just to add a little bit more grit to this sound. This is just the default setting that opens up with this. Let's see what we get with it now. Just increase this preamp a little bit. Into our mono. You can hear that it already creates a bit more presence in that setting. Okay, so let's think about adding a bit of subharmonic generation, but before we do that, let's go into our Pro Q3 here, and I'm just going to select the beat and let's just see what's coming on. So we can see that the bass is sort of occupying its own little area around this 200 mark, and the kick is coming in around this 90 Hertz mark. But if we take that out now and think about what is the low end actually doing in this sound. I'm going to add some sub-harmonic generator just to try and make the bottom end a little fuller, because the kick is quite a fat sounding thing on its own. We could thin it out, but I don't think we really probably want to in this instance. We just want to make the bass a bit bigger. So let's just drop this out. I'm going to grab the BX subsynth. I'm going to put it after the Devasta, or however you say it. I don't know how you say that. The Devasta. Because I don't want to be sending low sub into the saturation. I want to be adding some sub now. So let's just see what this does. All these things do different stuff, and I've got a few different types, so bear with me. So just on its own. So not a lot happening right now. So we can go in and we can solo these different frequency areas. Let's just crank this up. So you can hear a lot more weight coming in there, and just watch the meter over here on the right hand side. See how now we're adding all that extra weight. So I tend to think we're gonna do it until it's obvious and then back it off a bit. Yeah. We can crank the volume of that if we want. So that's sounding quite good. What's annoying about this is we just have this frequency range. We don't really know what frequency it is. It's just a general overview and then an increase in volume and a percentage rate. But you can certainly hear that by upping this little volume screw, if you like. You start to really generate some nice volume. Without it and with it. So let's go into this one here, which is 36 to 56, and just do something similar. So straight away, until I can hear it quite clearly, then back it off. Up this little volume. I sort of prefer this lower end, but I'm just going to leave it up around here somewhere. Without it. It's quite drastically different. And let's bring the mix back. Go into mono. Well, we're not going to notice a lot of difference here, but that Devasta is actually providing us with the grit that we need to hear a bass in a frequency range which is much smaller than I've got my basic Auratone setting. But now we've got our bass sort of taking over here. So let's just keep messing around with this. I don't mind where it's headed at this point. Compression. Add a bit of low cut, maybe around about 30. Add a bit of tight punch round this lower end. And let's go in now and grab a compressor, compress the heck out of it. I'm going to use Sonic Oxford Dynamics, and I'm just going to access the compressor. I'm also going to use the Sidechain EQ here, but I'll just access the compressor. I'm going to increase the knee, bit of a higher ratio, just open it up a bit, 4:1 roundabout. And with the Sidechain EQ, such a cool feature. I'm just going to put this in. I really want to target the low end, so let's leave the shelf out. Let's go down to this sort of 50 Hertz area. Dial in a bit of this. Listen to what happens. So you can really hear that EQ. I mean, you can use this plugin in two different ways. You could leave this in and you can use this as a 2-band EQ, or you can take it out and just put the sidechain in, and it just compresses the frequency here that you're setting. So just use it for what it's intended for, at least. So what I'm listening for here really is, is the kick still coming through? Am I getting the bottom end that I want? I am starting to get that, but I now want to put a multi-band compressor on this and target a couple of areas in the bass sound. One of them being that pokey little sort of 200 area. And of course I want to add a bit of expansion here on this one. Let's go into mono, make sure that we're still retaining our saturation that we added. Okay, so our before and after. So you can see that we've added quite an extra amount of warmth and depth to that bass sound. And we could carry on tweaking and so on and so forth to our heart's content. I guess it's finding a balance of when is too much of the substance too much. So I'm just going to go back and actually just back it off a little bit. And if I was to get really sort of, a bit more precise with it all, I would go into here and find that kick drum and actually just drop the bass out in that frequency just to give it a bit more room. We can still hear the attack of that kick. So that's bass number 1. So here's another bass sample that I've flown in, and let's just have a listen to what it sounds like against the track. So just on its own. So it has a lot less bottom end than the last bass, just from the source sound at least. So we want to be thinking like, where does this bass actually sit? Who's the winner here? So we'll just put the two together and have a listen to how they stand together. Well, this particular bass sound is definitely the winner in this mid-range area. Yeah. And it has a very solid sounding low end as well. It's just not as extended as the last one. But if we go into the isolate plugin and just select the low frequency, you can hear that resonant area around here is punching through pretty well. If I just go into the mono, yeah, so there's plenty of it. So I guess the first protocol would be to think about taming that a little bit so it's not so prominent. That said, you might like that. I mean, a lot of house tracks from the 90s loved this sort of really resonant bass sound, but let's just try and tame it a little bit. We could maybe use the onboard controls. You see I've actually already tamed it quite a bit. I've got some automation stuff going on here. I'll just get rid of that. But now we've sort of lost a lot of that character. So again, it's a balancing act. And when the filter's right open, it actually sounds quite nice. If I mess around with the amplitude envelope, I could possibly change that sound a bit more. And what we need to do now, I think, is just add a few bits of saturation to smooth out that resonant area, just to smooth it out a bit. So I'm going to use Saturn, and we'll just target the area. So let's just give it this change. Let's get some warm tube going on, see what it sounds like. Bring it down. And now I'm just going to target this low end, add a bit of saturation to this. And it's a case of just, balancing the two sounds out. And of course I'm going to add some compression to the whole thing. I'll grab a different type of compressor, maybe some parallel compression. This is a very cool compressor for this sort of job. I'm just going to, so I can hear the solo settings. started. Level balance it again. And if I feel like I've lost too much of that sort of resonant sound, I can just come back into Saturn and just pop it back in here. That's bass number 2. So bass number 3 is a collection of different bass hits that have been distributed via velocity in sampler in Ableton here. And so what that means is that if I just drop out of this and go back to the clip, you notice each of these velocities are different, and that represents a different sound. Let's just listen to what it sounds like in context. So this is a really great way of generating bass sounds that are a little bit more dynamic, a little bit less predictable. The problem is, though, that we end up with such a wide variety of sounds that we might not get a consistent low end. So let's have a look at what's going on overall in this bass sound. I'll just solo it. And you can see, just watching those samples, that there are different amounts of bass going on. Let's listen to it in mono with our reduced signal. But we need to sort of really solidify that low end. I'm going to bring in a plugin called Low Control. And so here it is. I'm just going to move it before the EQ. This plugin operates in 2 sections. This compression section here and this saturation section here. And we can select the frequency ranges that we want to apply these different things to. It works an absolute treat, and I think that the trick to using this plugin is to know what sort of sound you want in the very low end in the first place. And it has a great little solo feature for us to really just target the low end. So we really want to be looking at 90 Hertz and below. Actually, I'm going to make it 80 Hertz and below. Solo the low end. Just listen to it. So we're not getting any compression because the threshold's not low enough. So let's get it down to about 6 dB gain reduction. Increase the makeup gain. And you can subtly already hear that it's gelling that low end together. So let's bring in the saturation circuit and listen to what this does. It's a beautiful thing. But how much do we want? You know, we've got these samples that are fairly well produced, have a lot of saturation and compression and so forth already on them. We're not trying to reinvent a wheel here. We're just trying to get a bit more control over the low end of the samples so they sound like, well, they're all coming out of the same machine, and get it to sit with that kick drum better. So let's just back this right off and let's just go until we can actually hear when the saturation is sort of working for all the different sounds. Switch it off. let's actually just get a level reading on it. Okay, so we probably just need to bring it back a touch. No drama there. Without it, quite a vast difference. Let's bring it back in. Let's just have a listen to isolated frequency range. I mean, that's a really great starting point. Yeah, look, it's a wonderful plugin, this thing. It's not overly expensive either, I have to say. And it works really, really well. To be honest, it's the only one I use now anymore. But in saying that, others have their value as well, and we're going to look at a couple of others as well. But yeah. It's just about getting it all to sit together. So that's bass number 3. So bass number 4 is been generated by Cherry Audio's rendition of the Juno 106, Jupiter 106, one of those two. Correct me in the comments if you want. Let's have a listen to what it sounds like, the bass line I'm using. So again, plenty of saturation in this mid-range, which is going to make it pop through on a small speaker. Let's just quickly have a listen to that. And straight away, you know, there's almost too much of it. And a distinct lack of real sub. Falling away quite steeply at around about 80 Hertz. So we want to generate some sound right down here. I've got a variety of different things we could use, but let's use an old classic, R bass. So I mean, this thing's been around forever, and it works really well. There's tons of info about this. I'm just going to load up a preset. Big bottoms. What does it do? It's targeted around this, I think that's 58. Yeah, 58 Hertz. Yeah, we need some 58 Hertz. Let's just play it, see what it does. Oh. Obviously, it's added in a lot of sound. Whether it's the sound we want or not, though, is another story. Let's just back off the intensity and see what happens if we just bring it in nicely. So I'm starting to feel it there. Where was it before? Up here? Yeah, I feel like it's too much. I reckon we could even go lower here. And look what it's doing to the meter. It's really, you know, again, this is why I use the VU meter, because they react so well to added weight in the bottom end. So we're going to need to bring this back down. I think the sound itself is okay, but it needs a bit of work. See, there's like one note there which is really triggering it quite badly. So Let's find that note and bring its velocity down. So it's the root note. Just grab the two of them. Just a bit of messing around. Tricky little devil. It's a balancing once again, but I feel like now we need to actually compress this bass a bit more. So just go and grab a compressor, even though that is a type of compressor. It's more like an upward expansion type of compressor. Let's just grab, I don't know, something that does the trick pretty quickly. Let's grab this purple Audio MC by Plugin Alliance. This is a pretty cool thing. Let's up the input. So we're getting a lot of compression, we're getting a lot more sound. We're going to need to have to wind back the volume of that bass even more because it's just that much more present now. So I'm going to take it right out and bring it in. So if we go into the actual sound now, we could increase the frequency. Just take everything off. Of course I've lowered the volume where it was, but it still wasn't very warm and fat. But now and of course we could go in further and tweak this even more, focusing in on the resonant saturated area, but the sub is certainly sounding way better. And you'll notice I haven't sidechained any of these basses to the kick either. If I was to use this loop, I would cut the kick out and deal with it separately, and add a little bit of sidechain. I'm sort of finding myself more and more wanting to leave, to get sources to sit together rather than separate everything out and get a really obvious sidechaining effect. Especially in the type of music I've been producing lately, with live bands and so on. It's a different approach, and I sort of have become used to leaving all the instruments in and not sidechaining really anything anymore. Just using it when you really have to, rather tweaking a few things here and there and trying to get things to sit together nicely. So that's bass 4. Let's move on to the last example here. And I've got a really cool synth called the Virtual CZ, and it's actually a plug-in boutique synthesizer. Well, it's one that they've made, I'm imagining. And I remember getting this really cheap. I don't use it very often, but it's actually got some really cool sounds, and I should spend more time operating with this. I think it's based on some sort of Yamaha keyboard. Isn't that terrible that I don't know that? Actually, I'm fairly certain that it is a Yamaha CZ something or other. Famous Yamaha keyboard. Anyway, I've just picked out this Psy bass to put with this, and let's just have a listen to what it sounds like on its own. So when listening to that sound, it's got a lot of sub in it already. So I'm thinking now I need to maybe just add in a bit of high pass filter on this kick drum just to let that sub come through. Sometimes that's all you need to do, just make an adjustment. I'm not saying that's all we need to do right now, but let's just see what the kick sounds like with this in. So with that bass now, so we're seeing now that we've got the bass is extending a little bit more than the kick drum, but I think we could do a little bit better making this sound a little bit subbier. I'm going to bring in another sub-harmonic generator. Okay, this one's called Basement. And this is a cool sounding thing. I'm just going to grab a preset here, just something really simple. Let's just make it super fat, see what it does. So look, it's certainly added a lot of oomph to it, but it's also added a frequency, and it's also made things a little muffly. So let's see if we can sort of target things a little better. Let's just bring down the cutoff a bit lower, bring down the strength. So you can hear it can get quite rumbly quite quickly. It's okay. But when you start to focus in on the frequencies that are being affected, you can then start to make judgment calls about when is too much too much. Because we don't want to end up with a big rumbly sound either. We just want to add a little bit of weight and a bit of warmth. And the key areas of this plugin in particular are the cutoff and the strengths, but also this clarity. So when we bang this up, it started to change the whole texture of the sound to sounds a bit sucky. Down here we sort of keep that sound of that initial synth, just a reminder of what it actually does sound like. And when I put it in, you can actually really hear how much work this is doing. So let's pull the strings back. If I bring back we'll take the high pass filter off the kick. Listen to what happens. That low end gets really sort of cloudy. Let's bring it back in. So this is a bit of a insight into how we can use filtering on either the bass or the kick to clean up the bottom end and decide who's going to be the winner. In this instance, the bass is the winner in the low end. In the other instances, we had sounds that could tolerate the depth of the kick drum. This is a sound that can't, because it's quite a big sine wave sound in the bottom end, and well, sine wave is, needs space to come through. If I was to just try one other thing here, bring in this saturation unit, the VSM3, and add some low distortion to the sound, to the sine wave, to get it to cut a little bit more. Let's actually listen to it. It won't do anything at the moment because I haven't done anything, but I'll just turn it off anyway. Let's have a listen to it in our mono setting. So we've got plenty of that low mid, 120 up sort of acoustic bass sound frequency to carry us through the small speakers. But let's see what happens when we, well, try and dirty it up a little bit. I'm going to throw this section into mono and this one into the sides. Put the monitoring into the mono, and we'll only be able to hear the mono signal down low. So I'm just going to select the low area of the sound. So what we're hearing here is the saturation unit on the low end. So let's have a mess around with some of these parameters. I'm just going to target the low, and I'm going to bring the level right down and smash the drive. Just hold on to that sound. Let's go into this section, the monitoring this component, piece of circuitry. Just go through some of the different bands. Listen to it together. It's an amazing piece of kit, this. I hope that you can hear what it's doing here. It's really adding a bit of punch and spice to that sound. You still have the bottom end being generated by basement, but we're now saturating different frequency ranges. The low end is getting the second harmonic FET crushing circuitry on just the low end, and you heard it when I soldered it before. And on the top end, so I'm going to make that full, we're getting this third harmonic Zener blender circuit. And we can change the amounts of it by the different levels, but I don't mind it where it is. So without it, with it, now because I took the bottom end off the kick, I need to raise the volume of the kick because it's going to be lower now. So So there we have it. I hope you learned something from that, or there was something of some value in that for you. It's one of the trickiest things to balance the bass and the kick together, let alone the bass, the kick and the whole mix together. But these processes that I've outlined today are just a few of the ways you can get your bass and kick to solidify the bottom end. Ultimately, you have to decide which one's going to be the winner in which frequency range. So hopefully I've demonstrated that. But that's all for now. Ka kite anō.